The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. I could hear it drumming against the classroom windows as I wiped down the last table, the smell of lemon disinfectant mixing with the musty scent of wet coats hanging by the door. My hands were raw from the cold water, knuckles red and cracked, but I kept scrubbing. Mrs. Henderson paid me cash at the end of each week for cleaning the preschool after hours, and I couldn't afford to lose this job. Not when Lily's new shoes had worn through last month. Not when the landlord had already given me an extension I didn't deserve. "Mama." Lily's voice echoed from the reading corner, high and bright, cutting through the monotony of my thoughts. She was supposed to be coloring quietly while I finished, but I could see her small silhouette against the darkening window, pressing her nose to the glass. "What is it, baby?" I called back, wringing out the cloth into the bucket. The water had turned a murky gray. "There's a big black car outside. It's shiny." My stomach tightened reflexively. An old instinct I thought I'd buried 2 years ago. I forced myself to breathe slowly, evenly. It meant nothing. This was a nice neighborhood, nicer than where we lived, certainly. Rich parents drove expensive cars. That's all it was. "Come away from the window, sweetheart. We need to leave soon." I dried my hands on my jeans, worn thin at the knees, and began gathering our things. Lily's backpack with the fraying straps, my canvas tote bag that had seen better days, the keys to our apartment, held together with a rubber band because the keychain had broken months ago. Everything I owned could fit in 2 suitcases. I'd learned to travel light. The preschool sat on the edge of Riverside Heights, where old money met new development. Trees lined the streets here, their branches heavy with spring rain, and the houses had actual yards with gardens. Sometimes, when I locked up late like this, I'd let myself imagine what it would be like to belong here, to have Lily grow up somewhere safe, somewhere beautiful. But imagination didn't pay rent. I shouldered my bag and reached for Lily's hand. Her fingers were sticky with glue from her art project, a Mother's Day card she'd been working on in secret, though she'd already shown me 3 times. Her hair, dark like mine but with curls she'd inherited from her father, was coming loose from its ponytail. Her father. I pushed the thought away like I always did. Lily didn't remember him. She'd been barely 6 months old when I left. When I ran. "Mama, the car is still there," Lily insisted as I ushered her toward the door. "Can we see it up close?" "No, baby. We need to catch our bus." The truth was, we'd already missed the 6:15. The next one wouldn't come for another 40 minutes, which meant standing at the corner in the rain, hoping Lily wouldn't catch cold again. But I'd learned to smile through it, to make games out of hardship. We'd count raindrops. We'd sing songs. We'd pretend we were explorers in a jungle, not a single mother and her daughter trying to get home before dark. I locked the preschool door behind us, testing it twice like I always did, and stepped out into the damp evening air. The rain had softened to a drizzle, more mist than downpour, and the streetlights were just beginning to flicker on. Their orange glow made everything look hazy, dreamlike. That's when I saw it. The car Lily had mentioned sat directly across the street, idling at the curb. She was right. It was big and black, something sleek and expensive that didn't belong in this quiet neighborhood after hours. The windows were tinted so dark I couldn't see inside, and exhaust curled from the tailpipe like smoke signals. My heart kicked against my ribs. "Stop it," I told myself firmly. "You're being paranoid. It's been 2 years. He doesn't know where you are. He doesn't care." But my hand tightened around Lily's anyway, and I started walking in the opposite direction, toward the bus stop 3 blocks away. The rain-slicked sidewalk reflected our shapes, distorted and wavering. "Mama, you're hurting my hand," Lily protested, tugging against my grip. "Sorry, baby." I loosened my fingers but didn't let go. "Let's walk fast, okay? We can race." She brightened at that, always ready for a game, and started skipping ahead. I kept my eyes forward, resisting the urge to look back. The bus stop was just around the corner. We'd be fine. Everything was fine, except I could hear it now, the low purr of an engine behind us, crawling along at walking pace. My pulse roared in my ears, louder than the rain, louder than reason. I told myself again that I was overreacting, that trauma did this, made you see threats where there were none. 2 years of looking over my shoulder, of changing our names, of dyeing my hair darker and cutting it short. 2 years of working 3 jobs under the table, of keeping Lily out of school pictures, of never staying anywhere too long, 2 years of running from a ghost. The car was definitely following us now. I could feel it like a predator stalking prey, patient and inevitable. "Mama?" Lily's voice had gone small. She could sense my fear even if she didn't understand it. "It's okay," I lied, pulling her closer. "Keep walking." We turned the corner, and I dared a glance back. The car had stopped at the intersection, headlights cutting through the mist. For one wild moment, I thought about running, about grabbing Lily, and sprinting until our lungs gave out. But where would we go? The bus stop offered no shelter. The shops along this street were already closed. We were alone out here. The car's back door opened. I stopped walking, my legs refusing to obey. Lily bumped into me, confused, clutching my jacket. Through the rain and the failing light, I watched a figure emerge from the vehicle. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the kind of confidence that only came from never having been afraid of anything. He wore all black. Suit, shirt, even his shoes gleamed darkly in the wet. But it was the way he stood that made my breath catch. Absolutely still, like a wolf that had just spotted a rabbit. One hand rested casually at his side, the other held something I couldn't quite make out. Then he stepped forward into the streetlight, and the world tilted beneath my feet. I knew that face. I'd memorized every angle of it once, traced it with my fingers in the dark, whispered prayers against it that were never answered. Sharp jawline shadowed with stubble. Dark eyes that missed nothing, hair pushed back from his forehead, slightly damp from the rain. He looked exactly the same. No, not the same. Harder somehow, more dangerous. Like whatever softness I'd once imagined in him had been carved away entirely. Alessandro, my ex-husband, the father of my child, the man I'd sworn I'd never see again. He started walking toward us, unhurried, and I noticed the second man now, broader, older, staying close to the car. Security. Of course he had security. Alessandro Marchesi never went anywhere without protection. That's what you did when you controlled half the city's underground, when your family name was synonymous with power and blood. "Mama?" Lily's voice cracked with fear. "Who is that?" I couldn't answer. My throat had closed completely, words dying before they could form. Alessandro was 20 feet away now, 15, close enough that I could see the rain catching in his hair. He wasn't looking at me. His gaze was fixed entirely on Lily, and something in his expression made my maternal instincts scream. I stepped in front of her, blocking his view with my body. "Stay away from us." My voice came out steadier than I felt, though my whole body was shaking. Alessandro stopped maybe 10 feet away, and for the first time since he'd gotten out of the car, his eyes moved to mine. The impact was physical. I'd forgotten the intensity of his stare, the way it could strip away every defense and leave you feeling naked, exposed. "Emma." He said my name like he was tasting something familiar after a long absence. His voice was exactly as I remembered, low, controlled, with that slight accent that only appeared around certain words. "It's been a long time." "Not long enough," I managed, though my voice was shaking now too. "How did you find us?" Something flickered across his face. Disappointment, maybe, or anger. It was hard to tell with Alessandro. He'd always been impossible to read unless he wanted you to see what he was feeling. "Did you really think you could disappear?" He took another step closer, and I took one back, keeping Lily behind me. "That I wouldn't look for you? For her?" The emphasis on the last word sent ice through my veins. I'd known this moment might come someday. I'd prepared speeches in my head, practiced what I'd say if he ever found us, but now, faced with the reality of him, the solid, undeniable presence of Alessandro Marchesi in the flesh, every word evaporated. "You have no right," I said instead, my hands curling into fists. "We have a custody agreement. You signed the divorce papers. You agreed to stay away. I signed a lot of things I regret." His gaze dropped briefly to Lily, who was peeking around my legs now, curious despite her fear. When he looked at her, his expression softened in a way I'd never seen before. Hunger mixed with something that might have been longing. "She's beautiful. Don't." The word came out sharp, protective. "Don't look at her like that. Don't talk about her. You don't know anything about her." Whose fault is that? The question hung in the air between us, heavy with accusation. Part of me wanted to scream at him, to list every reason I'd had for leaving, every moment of fear and control and suffocation that had driven me out in the middle of the night, with nothing but my baby and a bus ticket. But Lily was listening, and there were some truths children shouldn't hear. Alessandro seemed to realize this too. His jaw tightened, and he looked past me again, studying our daughter with an intensity that made my skin prickle. I could almost see him cataloging details, her dark curls, her wide brown eyes, the way she was gripping my jacket with both hands now. "What's your name?" he asked her directly, his voice gentler than I'd ever heard it. Lily looked up at me for permission. I wanted to tell her to stay quiet, to pretend he didn't exist. But I could see the confusion in her face, the question forming that I'd been dreading for 2 years. "Who is this man?" "Lily," she said finally, so quietly I almost didn't hear her. "I'm Lily." Alessandro's expression cracked for just a second, raw emotion bleeding through before he locked it away again. He crouched down to her level, still keeping his distance, and I saw him swallow hard. "Lily," he repeated, testing the name. "That's a beautiful name. Did your mama choose it?" She nodded, pressing closer to me. "She has good taste." His eyes lifted to mine again, and this time there was no mistaking what I saw there. Possession, barely restrained. "We need to talk, Emma. Alone." "No." The refusal was automatic, final. "There's nothing to talk about. The divorce is finalized. You need to leave us alone. I don't think you understand your situation." Alessandro rose to his full height, and just like that, the dangerous man was back, the brief glimpse of vulnerability gone. "You took my daughter and disappeared without a trace. Do you have any idea what I could do with that information? How many laws you've broken?" My heart hammered against my ribs. "You wouldn't I?" He tilted his head, studying me like I was a puzzle he was solving. "I've spent 2 years looking for you, Emma. 2 years hiring investigators, calling in favors, turning over every stone in this city. Do you know what that kind of obsession does to a man?" The word obsession sent chills down my spine. I remembered that look in his eyes toward the end of our marriage, the way he'd monitor my phone, question every absence, demand to know where I was at every moment. It had started as protectiveness, or so I'd told myself. By the end, it had been a cage with no key. "Lily," I said quietly, not taking my eyes off Alessandro. "Go wait by the bus stop. I'll be right there." "But, Mama..." "Now, baby. Please." She hesitated, clearly torn between obedience and fear. Finally, she released my jacket and scurried past us, throwing one worried look back before rounding the corner. I waited until I couldn't hear her footsteps anymore before I spoke. "Listen to me carefully," I said, keeping my voice low and controlled. "I left for a reason. A lot of reasons. And nothing has changed. I don't care how much money you have, or how many people you threaten. Lily is my daughter, and I will do whatever it takes to keep her safe." "Safe?" Alessandro's laugh was bitter. "You think living in poverty, moving from place to place, working yourself to exhaustion, you think that's keeping her safe? I saw where you live, Emma. That apartment building is a safety hazard. The neighborhood is dangerous, and you're so busy working 3 jobs that you barely see her." Heat flooded my face, shame mixing with anger. "You've been watching us." "Of course I've been watching you." He moved closer, and this time I didn't back away. We were inches apart now, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that brought back memories I'd tried to forget. "Did you think I'd just let you go, that I'd move on and forget about you?" "I hoped you would. Then you hoped wrong." His hand came up, and I flinched instinctively. He froze, something like pain crossing his face, and lowered his arms slowly. "I'm not going to hurt you, Emma. I never hurt you. You didn't have to hit me to hurt me." The words hung between us, honest and brutal. Alessandro's jaw worked, his eyes searching mine for something I wasn't going to give him. "I want to know my daughter," he said finally. "I want to be part of her life." Is that really so unreasonable? Every instinct screamed at me to refuse, to grab Lily and run again, to disappear into the night like I'd done before. But I was tired, so desperately tired of running, of looking over my shoulder, of wondering when this moment would come. And standing here in the rain with Alessandro Marchesi staring at me like I was something he'd lost and finally found, I realized with sinking certainty that running wasn't an option anymore. He'd found us. He would always find us. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Alessandro's expression shifted, something dark and satisfied sliding into place. He stepped even closer, until I could feel the warmth radiating from his body despite the cool evening air. "I want what's mine," he said simply. "And make no mistake, Emma, you were always mine, both of you." Before I could respond, before I could process the weight of those words, he reached into his jacket and pulled out what he'd been holding earlier, an envelope, thick and official-looking. "A car will pick you up tomorrow morning," he said, pressing it into my hands. 9 o'clock. "Don't make me come get you." Then he turned and walked back to the sleek black car, leaving me standing alone in the rain with an envelope that felt like a death sentence, and a future that had just collapsed into something I couldn't control. I didn't sleep that night. The envelope sat on our kitchen table like a bomb waiting to detonate, catching the weak light from the single bulb overhead. I'd opened it the moment Lily fell asleep, my hands trembling so badly I'd nearly torn the contents. Inside was a single card, heavy stock, embossed with initials I recognized, and an address in the financial district. No explanation, no request, just an expectation that I would obey. The audacity of it made my blood boil. I paced our tiny apartment, my footsteps echoing off walls so thin I could hear Mrs. Chen snoring next door. The space was exactly as Alessandro had described it, cramped, outdated, with water stains on the ceiling and a radiator that clanked ominously through the night. But it was ours. I'd found it myself, paid the deposit with money I'd earned, signed the lease with a name that wasn't connected to the Marchesi family or their empire of violence. Now all of that felt like a child's attempt at hiding, naive and ultimately pointless. I checked on Lily 3 times before midnight, standing in the doorway of her room, really just a partitioned corner of the living area, watching the rise and fall of her small chest beneath the donated quilt. She'd asked about Alessandro on the bus ride home, her questions innocent and impossible to answer. "Who was that man, Mama? Why did he look at me like that? Are we in trouble?" I'd deflected with lies that tasted like ash in my mouth. "Just someone Mama used to know. Nothing to worry about. We're perfectly safe." But we weren't safe. We'd never been safe, not really. I'd just been deluding myself, thinking that distance and time could protect us from a man like Alessandro Marchesi. At 3 in the morning, I finally collapsed onto the second-hand couch, exhaustion overwhelming fear. My last conscious thought was of his eyes in the rain, the way they'd tracked over Lily with such naked hunger that every maternal instinct in me had screamed danger. The knock came at exactly 9 o'clock. I'd been awake since dawn, had dressed Lily in her best outfit. A dress I'd found at a thrift store, pale blue with only one small stain near the hem. She'd protested about missing preschool until I'd bribed her with the promise of pancakes later. Now she sat on the couch with her coloring book, humming softly, oblivious to the dread pooling in my stomach. Through the peephole, I could see a man in a dark suit, his posture military straight, his face professionally neutral. Not Alessandro. One of his people. My hand hovered over the doorknob. I could refuse. I could call the police, file a restraining order, fight this with every legal means available. But the memory of Alessandro's expression last night, that cold certainty, told me exactly how useful the law would be against him. The Marcheses didn't play by normal rules. They owned judges, politicians, entire precincts. Fighting them through official channels would be like trying to stop a flood with a paper cup. I opened the door. "Mrs. Marchesi," the man said, and I flinched at the name I'd worked so hard to shed. "The car is waiting." "It's Ms. Hart now," I corrected, though we both knew it didn't matter. I grabbed my purse, really just a worn canvas bag, and called for Lily. "Come on, baby. We're going for a ride." Her face lit up with excitement that made my chest ache. She loved cars, loved anything that broke the monotony of our careful, constrained life. She practically skipped to the door, her hand finding mine automatically. The vehicle waiting outside was different from last night's, a black SUV with windows just as dark, just as impenetrable. The driver opened the back door without speaking, and I lifted Lily inside before climbing in after her. The interior smelled of leather and something expensive, and the seats were so soft that Lily immediately started bouncing, testing their give. "Sit still, sweetheart," I murmured, buckling her in. My own seatbelt clicked into place with a sound that felt too much like a lock engaging. We drove in silence through morning traffic, Lily's nose pressed to the window as the city scrolled past. I watched the neighborhoods change from our rundown corner of the South End, through the gentrifying warehouse district, into the gleaming steel and glass of the financial district, where buildings scraped the sky and people in expensive suits hurried past with phones pressed to their ears. The car pulled into an underground garage, security gates sliding open before we even reached them. My pulse quickened. This was real. This was happening. In moments, I'd be face to face with Alessandro again, and this time Lily would be there to witness whatever confrontation followed. We parked near a private elevator, and the driver came around to open our door. "Top floor," he said, gesturing. "Mr. Marchese is expecting you." Of course he was. The elevator was glass-walled, offering a dizzying view of the garage dropping away beneath us as we rose. Lily pressed close to me, suddenly less excited, sensing perhaps the tension radiating from my body. I wrapped my arm around her shoulders and tried to project a calm I didn't feel. The doors opened directly into a penthouse apartment that stole my breath despite everything. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city, the morning sun turning the skyline into something from a postcard. The space was enormous, open plan, with furniture that looked like art pieces, floors of polished marble, and artwork on the walls that probably cost more than I'd earned in my entire life. Everything was precisely arranged, meticulously clean, reflecting the same controlled perfection that Alessandro demanded from everything in his orbit, including me, once. "Mama, it's so big," Lily whispered, her eyes huge as she took it all in. A woman appeared from somewhere deeper in the apartment, older, elegant, wearing a simple dress that probably cost a fortune. "Welcome," she said with a practiced smile. "I'm Teresa. Mr. Marchese will be with you shortly. May I get you something? Coffee? Juice for the little one?" "We're fine," I said quickly, not wanting to accept anything, to owe anything. Teresa nodded as if she'd expected the refusal. "Please make yourselves comfortable. He won't be long." She disappeared through a doorway, leaving us alone in all that expensive space. I kept my grip on Lily's hand, resisting the urge to explore, to touch anything. This wasn't our world. We didn't belong here among the wealth and polish and barely concealed danger. "Ms. Hart." His voice came from behind us, and I spun around, my heart leaping into my throat. Alessandro stood in the entrance to what looked like a home office, and the sight of him in daylight, in his own space, was somehow more intimidating than last night's rain-soaked encounter. He wore another suit, charcoal gray this time, perfectly tailored to his frame, and his hair was still damp from a recent shower. He looked powerful, untouchable, and when his gaze landed on Lily, his entire expression transformed into something softer, hungrier. "Thank you for coming," he said, though we both knew I hadn't had a choice. Lily pressed against my leg, suddenly shy. I could feel her trembling slightly, picking up on undercurrents she was too young to understand, but old enough to sense. Alessandro seemed to notice. He crouched down, the same movement from last night, bringing himself to her eye level. "Lily, right? Your mama told me your name." She nodded mutely, her fingers twisting in my jeans. "I have something for you," he continued, his voice gentle in a way that made my chest constrict with old memories. "Would you like to see?" "Alessandro," I started, but he was already standing, moving toward the office. He returned with a stuffed animal, a rabbit, pristine white with a pink nose and impossibly soft-looking fur. The kind of toy I could never afford, the kind that came from boutiques with names I couldn't pronounce. He offered it to Lily, and after a long moment of hesitation, she reached out and took it. Her face lit up with pure joy, and she hugged it to her chest immediately. "What do we say?" I prompted automatically, though the words felt wrong in my mouth. "Thank you," Lily whispered to Alessandro, and something in his face cracked open. Just for a second, before he smoothed it away. "You're welcome, Piccola." The Italian endearment rolled off his tongue naturally. "Why don't you play with your new friend while I talk to your mama? Teresa will show you where the toys are." As if summoned, Teresa reappeared, her smile warm and genuine now as she extended a hand to Lily. "Come with me, sweetheart. We have a whole room full of things that need someone to play with them." Every instinct screamed at me to refuse, to keep Lily close. But I could see the calculation in Alessandro's eyes. He'd arranged this specifically, created a scenario where I'd have to let her go, or make a scene that would upset her. Trapped, I nodded reluctantly. Lily looked back at me once, her new rabbit clutched in her arms. And then she was gone, following Teresa deeper into the apartment. The sound of their footsteps faded, and suddenly, I was alone with Alessandro, in all that vast, expensive space. "You manipulative bastard," I said quietly. Once I was sure Lily couldn't hear, he had the audacity to smile, a real smile, not the careful masks he usually wore. "I prefer strategic. Coffee?" "I don't want your coffee. I want to know what this is about, what you want from us." Alessandro moved to the windows, his back to me, and for a moment he just stood there, silhouetted against the bright morning sky. When he spoke, his voice was different, less controlled, rougher around the edges. "I want to know her. I want her to know me." He turned, and the intensity in his eyes made me take an involuntary step back. "She's my daughter, Emma, my blood. Do you have any idea what it's been like, knowing she existed somewhere and I couldn't find her? Couldn't protect her?" "Protect her?" The laugh that escaped me was bitter. "From what? From you?" "That's exactly what I was doing, Alessandro. Protecting her from your world, your life, your..." "My what?" He moved closer, and I held my ground this time, refusing to retreat. "My money? My ability to give her everything she could ever want? Look at you, Emma. You're exhausted. You work yourself to death for pennies while our daughter wears secondhand clothes and lives in a building that should be condemned." "She's happy," I shot back, my voice rising. "She's safe. She doesn't know about the violence, the criminal empire, the blood on your family's hands. She doesn't know her father." The words were quiet, devastating in their simplicity. "She doesn't know where she comes from. And you can moralize all you want about my choices, about my family's business, but you made a choice too. You stole 2 years of her life from me." Guilt twisted in my stomach, sharp and unwelcome. I'd known this argument would come, had prepared counterpoints, but standing here with him, seeing the genuine pain beneath his controlled exterior, my certainty wavered. "I did what I thought was right," I said finally, my voice smaller than I wanted. "You scared me, Alessandro. The way you controlled everything, watched everything, demanded to know every detail of my life. It was suffocating, and when Lily was born, when I saw how you looked at her like she was another possession to own..." "I was trying to keep you safe," he interrupted, his jaw tight. "Both of you. Do you have any idea how many people would love to get their hands on a Marchese wife? A Marchese child? The threats I dealt with that you never knew about? I never asked for that kind of protection. You didn't have to ask. It came with my name, with my ring." His hand moved unconsciously to his left hand, and I noticed for the first time that he still wore his wedding band. The sight of it sent a jolt through my system. "When you left, you didn't just take my daughter. You took my wife, my family, everything that mattered. We're divorced," I reminded him, though my voice shook. "That ring doesn't mean anything anymore." "Doesn't it?" He closed the distance between us in 2 strides, and suddenly he was right there, close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, smell that cologne that haunted my dreams. "Tell me something honestly, Emma. In 2 years, have you thought about me?" I wanted to lie. God, I wanted to lie so badly. But the truth was written all over my face, in the way my breath caught, in the way I couldn't quite meet his eyes. "Every day," I whispered. "I've thought about you every day, and hated myself for it." Something fierce and possessive flashed across his features. His hand came up slowly, giving me time to move away, and when I didn't, He cupped my face with a gentleness that seemed impossible from a man like him. "I've done things I'm not proud of," he said, his thumb tracing my cheekbone. "Built an empire on fear and loyalty and occasionally blood. But everything I've done, every choice I've made since the day I met you, has been about keeping you safe, about building something strong enough that no one could ever hurt what's mine. I'm not yours anymore, aren't you?" His voice dropped lower, intimate. "Then why are you trembling? Why haven't you pulled away?" "Because I was weak. Because despite everything, despite 2 years of running and rebuilding and promising myself I was over him, one touch from Alessandro Marchesi, and I was drowning all over again. I forced myself to step back, breaking contact. This doesn't change anything. You can't just show up and expect us to fall back into your life. Lily doesn't know you. She doesn't understand who you are or what you do. Then let me show her." His hand dropped to his side, but his eyes never left mine. "Let me be part of her life. Let me give you both the security, the comfort, the protection you deserve. In exchange for what?" I crossed my arms, trying to hold myself together. "What's the price, Alessandro? Because I know you. There's always a price." He smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator who'd just cornered its prey. "Move back in," he said simply. "You and Lily, into this apartment. Under my protection. Let me be a father to her. Let me be a husband to you again." The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." He moved to a side table, picked up a folder I hadn't noticed before, and held it out to me. "These are the custody papers my lawyers drew up. If you refuse, I'll file for joint custody through the courts. And Emma, with my resources, my connections, I'll win. You'll lose at least half your time with her, maybe more given your current living situation." My hands shook as I took the folder, opened it. The legal language swam before my eyes, but certain phrases stood out. Primary custody, supervised visitation, unfit living conditions. "This is blackmail," I breathed. "This is reality." He watched me process it, his expression unreadable. "You can fight me and lose Lily anyway. Spend whatever time you have left with her in courtrooms and custody battles. Or you can be smart. Move in here. Let me provide for both of you, and we'll figure out the rest as we go." "Figure out what?" I looked up at him, my vision blurring with angry tears. "How to pretend we're a family, how to explain to Lily why her mother is trapped in a penthouse with a man she's terrified of. Are you?" He moved closer again, and this time I did back up, my spine hitting the window. "Terrified of me?" "Yes." "No." I didn't know anymore. What I felt looking at Alessandro was too complicated, too tangled up in memory and desire and self-preservation to name properly. "What I'm terrified of," I said carefully, "is losing myself again, losing who I've become in the last 2 years. I don't want to change you." His hand came to rest on the window beside my head, caging me in without actually touching me. "I just want you home, where you belong, where you're safe." "Safe," I repeated, the word bitter on my tongue. "Is that what you call this? Forcing me into a decision where all my options lead back to you?" "I call it doing whatever it takes to keep my family together." And there it was, the core truth of Alessandro Marchesi. He didn't see manipulation, didn't recognize the prison he was building around us. In his mind, this was love. This was protection. This was him being generous, giving me a choice instead of simply taking what he wanted. The truly terrifying part was how much a small, twisted piece of me wanted to give in. Laughter drifted from somewhere deeper in the apartment. Lily's laughter, bright and carefree. The sound of my daughter happy in a way she so rarely was in our cramped, threadbare life. The sound of possibility, of comfort, of all the things I couldn't give her no matter how hard I worked. Alessandro heard it too. His eyes softened, tracking toward the sound. "She deserves better than what you can provide alone," he said quietly. "You both do. Why is it so hard to accept help?" "Because help implies choice," I shot back. "This is coercion. Call it whatever you want." He finally stepped back, giving me space to breathe. "But you have until tomorrow to decide. Either you and Lily move in here willingly, or I file the custody papers and we let the courts decide. Your choice, Emma. That's not a choice. It's the only one you're going to get." I didn't go home. Instead, I asked Teresa to call us a taxi, ignoring Alessandro's pointed offer of his driver. Lily chattered the entire ride back to our apartment, clutching her new rabbit and describing in elaborate detail the room full of toys she'd discovered. A dollhouse taller than she was, books with actual golden edges, a rocking horse that looked like it belonged in a museum. And Teresa said I could come back anytime I wanted, she finished, her eyes shining. Can we, Mama? Can we go back? I made a non-committal sound, staring out the window as our neighborhood came into view. The contrast was brutal. Broken streetlights, graffiti on the walls, a group of men smoking on a corner who tracked our taxi with predatory interest. This was the reality Alessandro wanted me to see. The reason his ultimatum felt less like a threat and more like an inevitability. Inside our apartment, the walls seemed to close in tighter than before. I sent Lily to wash her hands and then stood in the middle of our tiny living space, the custody papers burning a hole in my bag. 24 hours to decide. 24 hours to choose between the devil I knew and the poverty that was slowly grinding me down. My phone buzzed. An unknown number, but I knew who it was before I even looked. Think about what's best for her, not your pride. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. Instead, I turned it off and shoved it in a drawer. The rest of the day passed in a haze of normalcy that felt surreal. I took Lily to the park. The small, sad one 3 blocks away with broken swings and cigarette butts in the sandbox. I made us dinner from whatever was left in the pantry, pasta with butter and the last can of sauce. I read her stories before bed, my voice steady even as my mind raced with impossible calculations. After she fell asleep, I pulled out the custody papers again and actually read them this time. Alessandro's lawyers were good, terrifyingly good. They'd documented everything. My irregular employment history, our transient lifestyle, the string of temporary addresses. They'd included photographs of our current building, highlighting code violations I hadn't even noticed. They'd even obtained Lily's medical records, pointing out missed checkups and vaccinations that had slipped through the cracks when we were moving so frequently. On paper, I looked exactly like what I was. A struggling single mother barely keeping her head above water. The alternative they presented was equally stark. Alessandro's penthouse with round-the-clock security, private health care, access to the best schools in the city. A trust fund already established in Lily's name. A future of comfort and opportunity that I could never provide alone. They'd even included character references for Alessandro, business associates, community leaders, people who painted him as a devoted family man, a philanthropist, a pillar of the community. No mention of the Marchesi family business, of course. No mention of the violence that funded his empire. But judges didn't care about rumors and whispers. They cared about what could be proven, what was documented. And on paper, Alessandro Marchesi looked like the perfect father. I must have fallen asleep at the table because I woke to Lily shaking my shoulder, her face concerned in the early morning light. "Mama, you slept in your clothes," she said, and I could hear the worry in her voice. "Are you sick?" "No, baby." I pulled her into my lap, breathing in the baby shampoo scent of her hair. "Just tired. How about we skip preschool today and do something fun?" Her face lit up, and guilt twisted in my chest. She was so easy to please, so ready to find joy in the smallest things. She deserved better than this constant state of barely managing. We spent the morning at the library, free entertainment, free heating, free escape from the choice looming over me. Lily picked out a stack of picture books while I pretended to read, my eyes scanning the same page over and over without comprehension. My deadline was approaching. In hours, Alessandro would expect an answer. Around noon, my phone buzzed again. I'd turned it back on out of habit, and now I regretted it. Another message from the unknown number. "The car will arrive at 6 p.m. Be ready, both of you. No question mark. No, please." Just the absolute certainty that I would comply. My hands curled into fists around the phone. Every fiber of my being wanted to refuse, to take Lily and run again, to disappear into another city under another name. But I was so tired of running, and more than that, I was terrified that this time, he wouldn't just find us. This time, he'd make good on his threat and take Lily from me entirely. "Mama?" Lily tugged at my sleeve. "You're making your worried face again." I forced a smile. smoothing her hair back. Just thinking, sweetheart. Hey, how would you feel about staying somewhere new for a little while? Her eyes widened. Like a vacation? Something like that. The lie tasted bitter, but what else could I say? That we were moving into her father's penthouse because I had no other choice. That the man she'd met yesterday was going to become a permanent fixture in our lives whether I wanted it or not. Will we come back here? She asked, looking around the library's children's section with its worn carpet and donated books. I don't know yet, baby. We returned to the apartment around 3. I had 3 hours to pack up our lives. Again. And pretend this was somehow different from all the other times I'd fled into the night. Except this time, I wasn't running from Alessandro. I was running toward him. I moved mechanically, folding our clothes into the same 2 suitcases I'd been living out of for 2 years. Lily's stuffed animals, most of them threadbare and well-loved. My 3 books. The few photographs I'd kept of my life before. My parents who'd passed away years ago. My college roommate who'd stopped returning my calls after I disappeared. Everything that mattered fit into 2 suitcases and 3 cardboard boxes. The realization was depressing. At 5:30, I sat Lily down on the couch. She was still clutching the white rabbit Alessandro had given her, and the sight of it made my decision feel even more inevitable. Lily, sweetheart, I need to talk to you about something important. She set down her rabbit, her expression going serious in that way children did when they sensed adult gravity. Are we in trouble? No, baby. But remember the man from yesterday? The one in the nice apartment? She nodded slowly. His name is Alessandro, and he's... I swallowed hard, forcing out words I'd never planned to say. He's your father. Lily blinked at me, processing. I could see the wheels turning in her young mind, trying to reconcile this information with the story she'd been told her entire life. That her daddy had gone away before she was born. That it was just the 2 of us against the world. My daddy? She repeated, testing the word. Like Emily's daddy who picks her up from school? Yes, like that. My throat felt tight. He wants to get to know you, to spend time with you, and he's invited us to stay with him for a while. In the big apartment with all the toys? Her eyes lit up, and I hated how easily swayed she was by material things. Then again, she was 4 years old. 4-year-olds didn't understand the cost of luxury. The strings attached to comfort. Yes, in that apartment. Can I bring my rabbit? You can bring everything. She seemed to consider this, her little face serious. Then she looked up at me with those big brown eyes, Alessandro's eyes, and asked the question I'd been dreading. Don't you like my daddy, Mama? The question pierced straight through me. How did I explain to a 4-year-old the complicated tangle of fear and attraction, resentment and longing that Alessandro Marchesi inspired in me? How did I tell her that yes, I'd loved him once, desperately, and that love had nearly destroyed me? It's complicated, baby, I said finally, pulling her close. But I promise you, no matter what happens, you're safe. I'll always keep you safe. She hugged me back, trusting, innocent. I know, Mama. You're the best at keeping me safe. The words felt like knives. At exactly 6 o'clock, a knock sounded at the door. Not the driver from this morning. Alessandro himself stood in the hallway, looking entirely out of place in our rundown building. He'd dressed down slightly. Dark jeans, a black sweater, leather jacket. But even in casual clothes, he radiated power and money. Drawing stares from Mrs. Chen, who'd cracked her door to peek out. His eyes scanned our apartment in one swift assessment, taking in the packed boxes, the suitcases by the door. When his gaze returned to me, there was satisfaction there, and something else. Relief, maybe. You're ready, he observed. Did I have a choice? I kept my voice low, mindful of Lily playing with her rabbit in the corner. You always have a choice, Emma. You just don't always like the options. He stepped inside without invitation, moving to crouch beside Lily. Hi, Piccola. Ready for an adventure? She nodded enthusiastically, showing him her rabbit. Look, I'm taking the bunny you gave me. I can see that. She's beautiful, just like you. He glanced up at me. Did your mama tell you that you're my daddy? Lily's voice was matter-of-fact. Uh-huh. Are you going to read me stories at night like Mama does? Something crossed Alessandro's face. Surprise, pleasure, a hunger so intense it made my stomach clench. "If you want me to, then yes. Every night." She returned to her rabbit, as if this weren't a life-altering conversation, as if her entire world hadn't just shifted on its axis. Alessandro stood, moving close enough that I could smell his cologne again, that dark, expensive scent that brought back too many memories. "Thank you," he said quietly, and he sounded sincere. "For being reasonable about this." Reasonable. I nearly laughed. "Is that what you call it when someone has no other options?" "I call it choosing what's best for our daughter." His hand came up to cup my face, the gesture possessive, familiar, and for yourself. "Even if you won't admit it yet, you're exhausted, Emma. Let me carry some of the weight for a while." I wanted to pull away, to slap his hand aside and tell him I didn't need his help. But God, I was so tired. Tired of working 3 jobs. Tired of counting pennies. Tired of watching Lily wear clothes that didn't fit and eat meals that weren't quite enough. Tired of being strong all by myself. "This doesn't mean I forgive you," I said instead, my voice barely a whisper, "for how things were before, for what you did. I know." His thumb traced my cheekbone, gentle despite the darkness in his eyes. "But we have time, all the time in the world to figure this out." He dropped his hand and turned to survey our meager belongings. With a single phone call, he summoned people, 2 men in suits who appeared within minutes to carry our boxes and suitcases. They moved efficiently, professionally, treating our secondhand possessions with the same care they'd probably use for priceless artifacts. Within 20 minutes, our apartment was empty. Mrs. Chen watched from her doorway as Alessandro ushered us into the hallway, Lily holding his hand now with complete trust. I locked the door one final time, and the click of the deadbolt felt like the closing of a chapter, or the sealing of a cage. The SUV waited downstairs, its engine purring. Alessandro lifted Lily into her car seat himself, buckling her with surprising competence. And I wondered how much he'd learned about children in the 2 years of searching for us. How many parenting books had this dangerous man read, trying to prepare for a daughter he'd never met? I slid into the back seat beside Lily, and Alessandro took the front passenger seat, speaking quietly to the driver in Italian. As we pulled away from the curb, I watched our building recede in the side mirror. Peeling paint, broken mailboxes, iron bars on the windows. It had been a prison of poverty, but it had been my prison, my choice. Now I was trading it for a golden cage, and I didn't know if that made me smart or utterly foolish. Lily fell asleep during the drive, her head lolling against my shoulder. Her rabbit clutched to her chest. Alessandro kept turning around to check on her, his expression soft in a way I'd never seen during our marriage. Fatherhood had changed him, or at least the idea of it had. Whether that change ran deeper than surface affection remained to be seen. We arrived at the financial district building as twilight was settling over the city. The underground garage felt like entering a secret world, all concrete and shadows and the echo of expensive cars. Alessandro carried Lily while I followed with her rabbit, and I noticed the security measures I'd missed before. Cameras in every corner, guards at strategic points, reinforced doors that required key cards and codes. This was Alessandro's fortress, his kingdom. And I was walking into it willingly, bringing our daughter with me. The penthouse felt different at night, less intimidating somehow, the floor-to-ceiling windows now reflecting our images back at us rather than displaying the city. Alessandro carried Lily straight to a bedroom I hadn't seen before, decorated in soft purples and pinks, with a canopy bed that looked like something from a fairy tale, shelves full of books and toys, even a small table set for tea parties. He'd prepared for this, for us. The realization sent chills down my spine. "When did you do all this?" I asked, as he laid Lily down gently, pulling a quilt up to her chin. "I've been ready for months," he admitted, brushing Lily's curls back from her forehead with surprising tenderness. "Every time I got a lead on where you might be, I hoped it would be the one that brought you home. As if this place could ever be that." But watching him with our daughter, seeing the genuine emotion in his face as he looked at her sleeping peacefully in a bed he'd chosen for her, I felt something in my chest crack. This wasn't just about possession or control. Alessandro genuinely wanted to be a father, wanted to know Lily, to be part of her life. Maybe that made everything more dangerous, not less. He kissed Lily's forehead, a gesture so tender it made my throat tight, and then gestured for me to follow him out. We left her door cracked, a nightlight glowing softly, and walked down the hallway to another door. "Your room," Alessandro said, pushing it open. The space beyond was enormous, a master suite with its own sitting area, an ensuite bathroom I could see through an open door, and a bed that could fit 4 people comfortably. My boxes and suitcases sat neatly at the foot of it, looking pathetic and small in all that luxury. "Where's your room?" I asked, suddenly aware of how alone we were. Alessandro leaned against the doorframe, his expression unreadable. "Next door. Connected through the bathroom, but I had them install a lock on your side. You can use it whenever you want. I won't come in uninvited." The promise should have reassured me. Instead, it just reminded me how thoroughly he'd planned this, how every detail had been considered and arranged to make me feel simultaneously comfortable and trapped. "What now?" I asked, exhaustion finally catching up with me. "What are the rules of this arrangement?" "There are no rules, Emma. This is your home, yours and Lily's." He pushed off the doorframe, moving closer. "All I ask is that you give this a chance. Give me a chance to be the father she deserves, the husband you needed. We're not married anymore." A technicality. His hand came up to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear, the gesture intimate, familiar. We never stopped being bound to each other. You know that as well as I do. I did know it. That was the problem. 2 years apart, and one touch from him still made my pulse race, still made me remember nights when his hands had mapped every inch of my body, when his voice whispering my name had been the only thing that mattered. "I need time," I said, stepping back before I did something stupid like lean into his touch, to adjust, to figure out how this works. "Take all the time you need." He moved toward the door, then paused. "But Emma, don't make the mistake of thinking you can leave again. This time, I won't let you go." It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. And as I watched him disappear down the hallway, I wondered if I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life, or if, somehow, this was exactly where I was supposed to be all along. The first week passed in a strange, dreamlike haze. Lily adapted with the easy resilience of childhood, delighted by her new room, the endless toys, the attention Alessandro lavished on her. He was careful with her, gentle, patient, learning her quirks and preferences with an intensity that would have been touching if it weren't slightly obsessive. He memorized which stories she liked best, how she preferred her sandwiches cut, that she was afraid of the dark but too proud to admit it. I watched them together with a knot of complicated emotions in my chest. Pride that Lily had her father. Fear of what that meant. Resentment that Alessandro was so naturally good at this. As if the 2 years he'd missed hadn't mattered at all. And underneath everything, a traitorous warmth when I caught him looking at me over Lily's head, his expression unguarded for just a moment. Teresa became a fixture in our lives, cooking elaborate meals I didn't have to worry about, doing laundry I didn't have to wash by hand, freeing up time I'd never had before. At first I'd tried to refuse her help, clinging to my independence. But Alessandro had been firm. "Let her do her job, Emma. You've spent 2 years doing everything alone. Let yourself rest." So I did. And I hated how good it felt. The penthouse had become less intimidating as I learned its rhythms. Alessandro left early most mornings, returning for dinner without fail. He never discussed his business in front of Lily. Never took calls during meals, never let his other life intrude on the carefully constructed domesticity he was building. But I saw the signs anyway, the tension in his shoulders when his phone buzzed with certain messages, the hushed conversations in Italian with men who appeared at odd hours, the way his security detail doubled whenever we left the building, which wasn't often. One night, after Lily was asleep, I found Alessandro in his office. The door was open, an invitation I wasn't sure I should accept. He sat behind an enormous desk, reading glasses perched on his nose, papers spread before him. The glasses surprised me. I'd never seen him wear them before. "She asked about school today," I said from the doorway. Alessandro looked up, and even with the glasses, his gaze was sharp. "What did you tell her?" "That we'd talk about it." I stepped inside, my bare feet silent on the hardwood. I'd gotten comfortable here despite myself, wearing the silk pajamas Alessandro had bought without asking my size, knowing somehow that they'd fit perfectly. She needs structure, Alessandro. Friends her own age, normalcy. I've already enrolled her in St. Catherine's Academy. They have an opening in their pre-kindergarten program. He removed his glasses, setting them aside. Best security in the city, small class sizes, vetted teachers. You enrolled her without asking me? I knew you'd agree once you thought about it rationally. He stood, moving around the desk with that predatory grace I'd never gotten used to. She starts Monday. I've arranged for a driver to take you both, and there will be security. No, the word came out sharper than I intended. If you want her to have a normal childhood, you can't surround her with bodyguards. The other children will notice. She'll be marked as different. Alessandro's jaw tightened. She is different. She's my daughter. That makes her a target. To who? Your enemies? The people you've crossed in your business dealings? I crossed my arms, anger rising. Maybe if you weren't involved in, careful. His voice went cold, dangerous. You don't know anything about what I do or why I do it. You made sure of that when you left. I left because I couldn't breathe. The words burst out of me. 2 years of pent-up frustration finally finding release. Because every decision was made for me. Every move monitored. Every friend questioned. You didn't have a wife, Alessandro. You had a possession. Something flickered in his eyes. Hurt, maybe, or anger. It was hard to tell with him. He moved closer, and I held my ground even though my instincts screamed to retreat. Is that what you think? His voice was low, controlled. That you were just a possession to me, weren't I? I challenged. Everything about our marriage was about control. What I wore, where I went, who I saw. You said it was for my protection, but it was really about ownership. About making sure nothing and no one could take me away from you. And they didn't. He was right in front of me now, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body until you took yourself away, until you disappeared in the middle of the night like I was some kind of monster you needed to escape. You scared me, I whispered, the admission costing me. The intensity of your feelings, the way you watched me constantly, the way you'd get when other men even looked at me. It was too much. I felt like I was drowning. Alessandro's hand came up to cup my face, his thumb tracing the line of my jaw. I loved you, he said simply. I still love you. And yes, maybe I held on too tight. Maybe I didn't know how to love someone without trying to protect them from everything, including themselves. But Emma, his voice dropped lower, more intimate. I never wanted to cage you. I wanted to keep you safe. Those can be the same thing. They don't have to be. His other hand found my waist, and I knew I should step back, should maintain distance, should remember all the reasons I'd left. But my body betrayed me, leaning into his touch like a flower toward sunlight. Stay with me, Emma. Not because you have to, but because you want to. Let me prove I can be different, that we can be different. Alessandro. I started, but he cut me off with a kiss. It wasn't gentle. It was 2 years of longing and frustration, and desperate need compressed into a single moment of contact. His mouth claimed mine with a possessiveness that should have terrified me, but instead set every nerve ending on fire. My hands found his chest, and I couldn't tell if I was pushing him away or pulling him closer. He broke the kiss first, breathing hard, his forehead resting against mine. Tell me you don't feel this, he demanded. Tell me you don't still want me and I'll back off. I'll give you space, time, whatever you need. I couldn't. God help me, I couldn't lie about this. My body remembered his too well, responded to him too readily. 2 years apart hadn't changed the fundamental truth that Alessandro Marchesi had gotten under my skin, into my blood, and no amount of distance had been enough to exorcise him. I feel it, I admitted, my voice shaking. But feeling something doesn't make it right, doesn't make it healthy. Then we'll figure out how to make it healthy. His hands tightened on my waist, not painful, but insistent. Together, as a family. That's all I'm asking for. A chance to do this right. Before I could respond, before I could think through the implications of what he was offering, Lily's voice called out from her room. Mama, we broke apart instantly. The spell shattered. I pressed my hands to my flushed cheeks, trying to compose myself while Alessandro adjusted his shirt, his expression shifting from intense to carefully controlled. "I'll check on her," he said, moving toward the door. Then he paused, looking back at me. "Think about what I said, Emma. About us. About giving this a real chance." He left before I could answer, and I stood alone in his office, my lips still tingling from his kiss, my heart racing with fear and want and confusion. Through the doorway, I could hear him talking to Lily in that gentle voice he reserved for her. And despite everything, despite all my reservations and fears, a small, traitorous part of me whispered, "What if he's right? What if we could make this work?" I pushed the thought away and headed back to my room, locking the bathroom door between our spaces like I did every night. But as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't stop thinking about his hands on my waist, his mouth on mine, the way my entire body had responded to him like no time had passed at all. This was dangerous. This was exactly how I'd gotten lost the first time, drowning in Alessandro's intensity until I couldn't remember who I was without him. But as I drifted toward sleep, I couldn't help but wonder if maybe, just maybe, drowning wouldn't be so bad if I knew he'd be there to pull me back up. 3 months changed everything. Lily thrived at St. Catherine's Academy, making friends with an ease that both delighted and terrified me. She came home each day bubbling with stories about her teacher, her classmates, the art projects and playground adventures that filled her world. Alessandro had compromised on the security. One discreet guard who stayed in the car during drop-off and pickup, invisible to the other children but close enough to intervene if needed. I'd started working again too, though not out of necessity. Alessandro had made it clear that money wasn't an issue, that I could focus entirely on Lily if I wanted, but I needed something that was mine, some piece of independence in this gilded life he'd built for us. So I'd taken a part-time position at a gallery in the arts district, curating exhibitions and working with artists who reminded me of the person I'd been before marriage and motherhood had redefined me. Alessandro hadn't objected. In fact, he'd seemed pleased, proud even, when I'd told him about the job. "You should do what makes you happy," he'd said. And I'd searched his face for the controlling man I remembered, but I'd found only sincerity. He was different now. Or maybe I was seeing him differently. The protectiveness was still there, would always be there, woven into the fabric of who he was, but it manifested in subtler ways. He asked about my day instead of demanding an itinerary. He trusted me to make decisions about Lily's schedule, her activities, her life. When I went out with colleagues after work, he texted to make sure I was safe, but didn't send a car to follow me. It was progress. Real, tangible progress. And the chemistry between us? That hadn't dimmed at all. If anything, it had intensified, simmering beneath every casual touch, every shared glance across the dinner table, every good night that ended with him walking me to my door, but never crossing the threshold. He was keeping his promise, not coming in uninvited, giving me time and space to decide what I wanted. The problem was, I was starting to know exactly what I wanted, and it terrified me. It happened on a Saturday in late autumn. Alessandro had taken the day off, a rarity, and suggested we go to the park as a family. The word had slipped out naturally, and neither of us had corrected it. We were a family, whether I was ready to admit it or not. Riverside Park was spectacular in October, the trees ablaze with color, the air crisp and clean. Lily ran ahead, her laughter carrying back to us as she chased falling leaves. Alessandro and I walked behind her, close enough that our shoulders brushed occasionally, far enough that we maintained the careful distance we'd been preserving for months. "She's happy," Alessandro said, watching Lily with an expression that made my chest ache. "Really happy. I see it in her eyes every day." "She is," I agreed. "This life, what you've given her, it's more than I ever could have provided alone. What you gave her was more important." He looked at me, and the intensity in his gaze made my breath catch. "You gave her love, security, a mother who would do anything to protect her. That's worth more than any amount of money. Even when it meant keeping her from you?" The question had haunted me for months. The guilt of those stolen years, of Lily's first words and first steps that Alessandro had missed. of a bond that should have formed naturally, but had to be built from scratch. Alessandro was quiet for a long moment, his eyes tracking Lily as she climbed onto a low stone wall, balancing carefully. "I was angry at first," he admitted. "Furious that you'd taken that time from me. But Emma," he turned to face me fully, "I understand why you did it. I'm not the same man I was back then. Fatherhood has changed me. You leaving changed me. It forced me to look at who I was, what I'd become, and I didn't like what I saw. What do you see now?" I asked softly. "A man trying to be better, for his daughter, for the woman he never stopped loving." His hand found mine, fingers lacing together with a rightness that made my heart skip. "I know I can't erase the past. Can't take back the ways I hurt you, controlled you, made you feel trapped. But I can promise you a different future. One where you're my partner, not my possession. Where we make decisions together, where you're free to be whoever you want to be." Tears pricked my eyes. "You mean that?" "I've never meant anything more." He squeezed my hand gently. "I love you, Emma. I've loved you since the day we met, and I'll love you until I die. But I want you to choose me this time. Not because you have no other option, not because I've backed you into a corner, but because you want to be with me, because you believe we can build something real." Before I could respond, Lily's shriek cut through the moment. Not fear, excitement. She was pointing at something beyond the wall, bouncing with enthusiasm. We hurried over to find she'd spotted a dog, a golden retriever puppy playing with its owner nearby. "Can we get a dog, Daddy?" Lily asked, and my heart stopped at the word she'd started using naturally over the past month. "Please, I promise I'll take care of it." Alessandro crouched beside her, considering seriously. "That's a big responsibility, Piccola. Are you sure you're ready?" "I'm sure. I'm a big girl now." "Mama says so." He glanced up at me, a question in his eyes. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. We'd become this: parents making decisions together, partners in the daily negotiations of family life. When had that happened? When had the fear and resentment transformed into something that felt dangerously close to trust? "Then we'll look at shelters next weekend," Alessandro promised, and Lily threw her arms around his neck, squealing with delight. Over her head, his eyes met mine, and the vulnerability I saw there, the desperate hope, broke something loose inside me. We spent the rest of the afternoon in the park, watching Lily play, sharing comfortable silences that spoke more than words ever could. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Alessandro bought us hot chocolate from a vendor, and we sat on a bench while Lily danced through the falling leaves. "I'm scared," I said suddenly, the words escaping before I could stop them. Alessandro didn't pretend not to understand. "Of what?" "Of this. Of us. Of letting myself love you again and losing myself in the process." I stared at my hot chocolate, watching steam curl into the cooling air. I spent 2 years learning how to be just Emma. Not Alessandro's wife, not a Marchese, just me. I'm terrified of forgetting her again. "Then don't." He shifted closer, his thigh pressing against mine. "Be Emma. Be exactly who you are." I fell in love with that woman, the one with paint on her hands from the gallery, the one who makes up silly songs for Lily at bedtime, the one who argues with me when she thinks I'm wrong. That's who I want, not some perfect, submissive version of you that only existed in my controlling fantasies. What if we can't make it work? What if we fall back into old patterns? Then we'll course correct, together. He took my hand again, and this time I didn't pull away. "Emma, I'm not asking for perfection. I'm asking for a chance. That's all. Just a chance to prove that we can be different, that what we have is worth fighting for." I looked at him, really looked at him, at the man who'd searched for 2 years, who'd learned patience and compromise, who read bedtime stories with silly voices and had memorized our daughter's favorite songs. At the darkness that would always be part of him, the dangerous edge that came from the life he led, but also at the genuine love and devotion that shone through despite it all. "I want that too," I whispered. "God help me. I want to try." The smile that broke across Alessandro's face was like sunrise after a long night. He cupped my face with his free hand, his thumb brushing away a tear I hadn't realized had fallen. Then try with me. Take it one day at a time. If it ever feels like too much, if I ever make you feel trapped again, you tell me. We talk about it. We figure it out together. Together, I repeated, testing the word. It felt right. Terrifying, but right. He leaned in slowly, giving me time to pull away, but I didn't. This kiss was different from the desperate one in his office months ago. This was soft, sweet, a promise rather than a demand. When we pulled apart, Lily was standing in front of us, her hands on her hips, a knowing smile on her face. "Are you and Daddy going to get married again?" she asked with the bluntness of childhood. Alessandro and I looked at each other, and I saw my own mixture of fear and hope reflected in his eyes. "Maybe someday," I told her honestly, "if we both decide that's what we want." "Would that be okay with you?" She pretended to think about it, her expression comically serious. "Only if I can be the flower girl, and if we get the dog first." Alessandro laughed, a real, unguarded laugh that made my heart squeeze. "Deal. Though we might need to negotiate the order of those events." We walked home as the streetlights began to flicker on, Lily between us holding both our hands, swinging her arms and singing off-key. Anyone watching would have seen a perfect family portrait. Wealthy, happy, complete. They wouldn't have seen the complicated history, the hurt and healing, the careful negotiation of boundaries and trust. That night, after Lily was asleep, Alessandro walked me to my door like he always did. But this time, when he turned to leave, I caught his hand. "Stay," I said softly, "just to talk. We have a lot to figure out if we're really going to do this." His eyes searched mine, making sure I meant it, that I was ready. Then he nodded and followed me inside. We talked until dawn, sprawled on my bed like teenagers, mapping out what a real partnership would look like. He promised more transparency about his business, within reason. I promised to tell him when I needed space instead of running. We negotiated, compromised, laughed at how ridiculously adult we were being about something that felt so impossibly fragile. Somewhere around 3 a.m, talking faded into touching, gentle and exploratory, relearning the geography of each other's bodies. When he kissed me this time, it felt like coming home after a long journey. And when I pulled him closer, erasing the last inches between us, it was a choice I was making freely, completely. The next morning, Lily found us both asleep on my bed, fully clothed, our hands still intertwined. She climbed up between us, and Alessandro woke first, his arm automatically circling her close while he reached for me with his other hand. "Good morning, Piccola," he murmured, his voice rough with sleep. "Is Mama staying in here now?" Lily asked, poking my shoulder until I opened my eyes. I met Alessandro's gaze over her head, saw the question there, the hope. "Maybe," I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. "We're still figuring things out. Okay." Lily accepted this with the easy adaptability of childhood. "Can we have pancakes?" Alessandro kissed the top of her head, then reached over to brush his lips against mine, a simple gesture that held the weight of everything we were building together. Pancakes sound perfect. Later, after breakfast and lazy morning routines, after Lily had dragged us both to her room to show Alessandro the new picture she'd drawn, our family, with a dog that didn't exist yet, I stood at the window looking out at the city. Alessandro came up behind me, his arms wrapping around my waist, his chin resting on my shoulder. "Regrets?" he asked quietly. I leaned back into him, feeling the solid warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart against my back. 3 months ago, this would have felt like a cage. Now it felt like an anchor, something to hold on to rather than something holding me down. "No regrets," I said, covering his hands with mine. "Just hope, and maybe a little fear, but the good kind. The kind that means something matters enough to be scary. I'll take that." He pressed a kiss to my temple. "As long as you're here, as long as we're trying, I'll take whatever you can give me." Outside, the city stretched endlessly, full of possibilities and dangers, beautiful and brutal in equal measure. But standing here in Alessandro's arms, with our daughter playing happily in the next room, I realized something fundamental had shifted. I wasn't running anymore. I wasn't hiding. I was choosing to stay, to fight for this fragile, complicated, impossibly precious thing we were building. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Because Alessandro Marchesi, dangerous, possessive, impossible Alessandro, had proven he could change, that he could love me without caging me, protect me without smothering me. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to build a future on. 3 months had changed everything. But it was the promise of what came next, the years of growth and compromise, of laughter and challenges, of being partners and parents and people who chose each other every single day, that made my heart full. We weren't perfect. We'd stumble, argue, need to recalibrate our boundaries again and again, but we'd do it together, and that made all the difference. "I love you," I said, turning in his arms to face him. "I'm still scared, and I'm still figuring this out, but I love you. I think I always have." Alessandro's smile could have lit the entire city. He kissed me deeply, thoroughly, a kiss that held promises and passion and profound relief. When we broke apart, both of us were breathing hard, his forehead pressed to mine. "I love you too," he whispered. "Both of you. My whole world, right here in my arms." And standing there in the morning light, with Lily's laughter echoing from her room and the future stretching before us, uncertain but hopeful, I finally let myself believe it.